Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from cardswire.com and USA Today's NFL Wire site that, of course, covers the Arizona Cardinals. Joining me in episode 761 as we are in the second week of NFL free agency is Revenge of the Birds, Seth Cox, the SB Nation Arizona Cardinals site. And we got a few more signings to talk about as the Cardinals have made 3 additions since our last show. Returner Devin Duvernay, linebacker Jack Gibbens, and also defensive lineman Andrew Billings. And we want to talk about each of them. Let's talk about that. And then in addition as we get near, we're about 6 weeks away from the NFL draft. And we see that right now there are odds that suggest the Cardinals are in on a quarterback, obviously not at the top of the draft, but Seth, we've got lots of things to talk about. And I know, guys, that it's been that this podcast has turned into the negative Nancy's. But honestly, how can you put a positive spin on anything the Cardinals are doing right now? When we start talking about draft prospects and how they can help, that'll be a little better. But with the players that the Cardinals are adding, with the plan that they seem to have or not have, the way they've gone about their hiring their head coach, how they came to retain defensive coordinator Nick Rallis, it just feels kind of like a clown show. And so we know that it's hard to root for this team and it's hard to find hope. And I know that you want to hear some optimism. We don't have any for you. We don't have any for you yet. So yeah, Seth, I mean, Devin Duvernay, isn't this about 7-8 years later? Didn't we think that the Cardinals would be all in on Devin Duvernay, Kyler Murray's cousin, when they drafted Kyler Murray? And now that they cut Kyler Murray, they bring in Devin Duvernay when he's still a good return guy, but not a great return guy anymore.
Yeah, and he hasn't had more than 80 yards in a season as a receiver since he was with the Baltimore Ravens. So, adding Duvernay again, it's fine, especially if it's on a 1-year deal for, the right money. Maybe the athleticism, maybe the speed is something that, Mike LaFleur and his offense is going to be able to do a little more with. As a 25-year-old in 2022, he was kind of coming into his own, right? 407 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. And then you look at what he did as a return man that season, averaged 12 yards per punt return, averaged over 25 yards per kick return. And since then, he's never really put it together. His 2021 season, he was the all-pro return man. I mean, he led the NFL in punt return yards. But then since 2022, which he made the Pro Bowl, 2023, really good punt returner, bad kick returner, under 20 yards per return in 2023. 2024, borderline terrible punt returner, under 9 yards per punt return. Back to being a good kick returner over 25 yards. And then last year is kind of a mixed bag, very average, 11 yards per punt return, just under 27 yards per kickoff return. And again, it would be it's not a bad signing. It's not a good signing. It's a signing.
Everything we've graded, like, that's a C. That's a C signing.
Because you look at what Greg Dortch did last year as a kick and punt returner, 11.6 and 26.2. So he was better, slightly as a punt returner, slightly worse as a kick returner. So
Dortch is offered more in the passing game over the last couple of years than Duvernay. So it's almost like they're just getting a discount Greg Dortch who's had a better NFL career than George. George has had himself a lovely NFL career. He's turned into, from borderline guy to guy that deserves to be on an NFL roster. But they replaced him with a guy that is basically a discount version of himself.
Right. And that's, again, it's just kind of rearranging things, and there's nothing wrong with it. They're about the same age. Duvernay is a little bit older, but about the same age. They've had similar career. It's just that, Duvernay's highs were higher. No questions asked.
He's a bigger frame. He's taller. He's bigger, which that probably, if they have any plans to use him in the offense, I think they might find some better results. That as productive as George was when he got the ball in his hand was something that was noticeable, is that anything in traffic, he wasn't able to do much as a receiver. So it'll be interesting, although his offensive usage last year went all the way down to 40 offensive snaps. And this was, he was over 600 for the Ravens in 2021 and 2022, then was down to 136. In Jacksonville, it was 190. But no, last year he became basically 100% special teams, and we'll see how that goes, because he lines up right now as their wide receiver 4, or competing with the likes of Xavier Weaver to be their 4th receiver. You've got Marvin Harrison, you've got Michael Wilson, you've got Kendrick Bourne, and then you've got kind of the mishmash of guys after that. Is it going to be Xavier Weaver? Is it going to be Devin Duvernay? How much are they going to use 4 receivers on the field at any point anyway, or just rotate in and out? So that's kind of how that goes. Wouldn't you say that probably the most intriguing signing is a name that probably most people don't know, and that was it was first reported that he was going to have a meeting, that he was going to meet the Cardinals early in the week, and the Cardinals announced his signing, and that is former Titans and Patriots linebacker Jack Gibbens, who gets and that's what's important to note, a 2-year deal. One of the few multi-year deals that we've seen from the Cardinals in free agency. They add Jack Gibbens, 6'3", 242. I view him, if you look at his usage last year, he is basically filling Akeem Davis-Gaither's role, probably at a lower price, because they signed Davis-Gaither last year, 2 years, $10 million. The Patriots non-tendered Gibbens, who was a restricted free agent, like the lowest tender would have been $3.5 million for a year. So if I had to guess, we haven't seen the numbers yet, that his contract probably comes in at 2 years, $5 to $5.5 million, which, if you want a guy that's got kind of the same usage as Akeem Davis-Gaither, you likely slightly upgraded and you get him for cheaper.
Yeah, and you look at it, I mean, you mentioned it, last year was his, best year as a pro. I mean, we could argue his second season with the Patriots.
Titans that year.
Or sorry, yes, Titans. An undrafted free agent out of Abilene Christian and then Minnesota. He'll be 28 this season. He had only 8 starts, but he played over 48% of the snaps, that season. But last year he played 281 special team snaps. So like he was a guy that saw a lot of reps as special teams, and then is a more than capable fill-in starter. I don't even want to say backup, because like backup would mean that he's not doing and like he is a very, very good special teamer, and then a guy
he's essentially, because like the Cardinals, when they go nickel, if you start nickel, they often pulled that linebacker on the field because they went with a big nickel and kept they went with a 3-3 instead of moving the nose tackle like a lot of 3-4 teams do in nickel. They would maintain the strong front and replace one of the linebackers. That would seem to be the type of role that he had in their linebacker rotation. He was the one that would come off in nickel, correct?
Yeah, and you look at it last year, I mean, career high in passes defense at 4, uh, which is crazy to think because he had 4 in his 3 years with Tennessee. You look at it, he had 8 tackles for loss after having 5 in his career in Tennessee. So like he improved. He really did. He improved. He got better. Maybe it's coming all together, but like you said, it's such a minimal contract that you look at it and you go, hey, this could be a high upside signing. If not, it's at worst a discounted version of Akeem Davis Gaither.
We'll say Davis Gaither. There's one thing that many people overlooked is that he was a beast on special teams. He led the Cardinals with 20 total special teams tackles. That's a lot, but he just was not good on defense. And this is one of those signings that we look at, and the Cardinals filled a need, and they're not. So basically, it says Cody Simon not guaranteed a spot in the lineup. It allows if they view Cody Simon more as a Mike, is that he can play behind Mac Wilson or compete with Gibbons for playing time, and it's a nice situation. But it fills a hole that they had on the roster. Not that it was a spectacular role. Like if we're grading this move, it's probably like a B minus C plus move because it's a solid deal, but he's an uninspiring addition, but he's not a bad addition.
Right. And so you look at it and that's, again, it's kind of rearranging the deck chairs, but at the same time, it probably is a slightly better contract to have than Akeem Davis Gaither based off how poorly Davis Gaither played as a linebacker last year, right? Not as a special teamer, but as a linebacker. So you look at it from that perspective and it makes sense.
Yep. Coming up next on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Mr. Cardinals talk on the web. Let's talk about the next signing. They add another defensive lineman. That's coming up next on Rise of Sea Red. We're back on the Rise Up Seaward podcast. The Best Our Cardinals talk on the web. The other addition the Cardinals announced on Monday was the addition of veteran defensive lineman Andrew Billings. And we're getting to the point, Seth, that I remember, we're talking 8-10 years ago now, is the mid 2010s. I remember hearing you and Justin and then on this show talking about guys like Andrew Billings on the podcast when they were draft prospects. And Billings, I seem to remember you and Justin on your draft one talking about him. What was it, 2017, 2016?
Yeah.
And now he's an old man. He's 31 years old, joins the Cardinals and becomes their third free agent defensive line addition. They've signed Roy Lopez to a 2-year deal, Jonah Williams to 1 year. We're going to have to correct ourselves from a week ago. Jonah Williams' contract is a 1-year, pretty minimal deal, about $1.3 million. And now they add Andrew Billings on a 1-year contract, and that's in addition to re-signing LJ Collier. And so while Calais Campbell is still out there, I would doubt he would come back to the Cardinals. So the Cardinals now have a bunch of experience, but not a lot of accomplishments on their defensive line. And Andrew Billings is just another one of those guys. He's a large man at 6'1", 340. He's been durable-ish. He played all 17 games last year. He was a starter for the Bears. He played over 500 snaps. And so he's a guy who can play a decent number of snaps. He's not spectacular. He was probably one of the worst defensive linemen on the Bears last year, but depending on what role you have for him, like in what scheme, how they have him working differently with the Bears, it's not a bad addition, I would say. He's managed to have a productive NFL career for the last near decade, and if you can add decent production to a defensive line that was mostly awful last year, it's not a bad move.
Yeah, and you look at the snap counts played, that's kind of where it fits, and he's a 50%er, right? So when he's healthy for a full season, he's going to give you about 50% of the snaps that he's going to be able to play. Last year, 511 snaps, which was 48%. I talked to some Chicago people, and they said he was much better under Eberflus, I believe it was. Yeah, Eberflus fit much better, fit the defense much better, wasn't a fit with the new guy. I'm not even going to like pretend to know who that was in the scheme.
Dennis Allen.
Yeah, Dennis Allen. So so the weight is a concern, but maybe he's more motivated now that he's out of the Dennis Allen scheme. I mean, you look at it, you're talking about it, like you said, 6'1", 340 pounds. That's so much weight. It's just it's so big. But he played 48% of the snaps. The year before, he played 60% of the snaps. He only played in 8 games, but played 60% of the snaps. The year before that, and Dallas played, just under 50% of the snaps. The year before that in Las Vegas, played 52% of the snaps. So, like, he's been right around that 50% mark most of his career. Put on 30 pounds since the combine, which is just baffling to think about, right? Like, a guy that I mean, don't get me wrong, 6'1's tall, but a guy that's 6'1" to put on 30 pounds while playing in the NFL is not something that you see very often. So we'll see how it works out. I think he's a interesting fit. We'll see how it all plays out. I mean, he's going to be a rotational guy with Roy Lopez, right? Like, now you don't have to worry about that interior at all this year. If you draft somebody, it's not a big deal.
Right. Well, and it also because there's the Walter Nolan situation with his knee. We don't know how serious the knee injury was, and so they have enough guys on the roster based on right now where you could start the season without Nolan and feel like you could field a team, even though without Nolan, you look at that lineup and you're going to say, these guys have no flash or juice at all.
Yeah, and that's what the issue becomes, right? Like, you have nothing that gets you excited if Walter Nolan's hurt. You have nothing that has proven to be a game changer, game wrecker. We're hopeful about Darius Robinson, right?
But he hasn't shown it yet. Like, that's the thing. We're hopeful, but he hasn't done anything. So
you look at it. Here's what they've done. And and again, I don't want this to come off as negative. Just kind of preface this at the beginning of the show. There's nothing negative about what they've done. Like, you can't look at anything that they've done and been like, this is terrible. Other than maybe Gardner Minshew, but like outside of that, like,
or even Elijah Wilkinson's probably the move that people are the most what. But he did start 17 games at right tackle last year. So,
well, and so what they've done with all these signings, right? Kendrick Bourne, Elijah Wilkinson, Andrew Billings, Jack Gibbens, Andrew Wingard. What they've done is they haven't gone and got a veteran that's just unquestionably better. Like, you don't look at Elijah Wilkinson and go, oh, he's 100% better than Josh Fryer or Christian Jones. You go, he's probably better than them, but he's also not going to preclude. He's not going to preclude his signing, his being on the roster doesn't preclude them from giving Fryer the shot or drafting Caleb Lowe, right, or Spencer Fanu. Like, it doesn't preclude that. Same thing with Andrew Billings. You look at it and you go, Andrew Billings gives you depth. It doesn't preclude you from drafting, somebody on day 2. Jack Gibbens, he's a nice fit, but you don't go, oh, we got Jack Gibbens. Check. Linebacker is no longer a need. So all of those signings have done something in the sense of like, it doesn't take a spot away or a chance to start away from a young player who just hasn't shown it yet And it also doesn't say, oh, don't draft this position. You know, if Andrew Wingard beats out Rabbit Demerson, that says more about Rabbit than it does Wingard, right? And so then you go, okay, like then safety's a need. Whereas like if Rabbit wins the job, then you still have 3 capable safeties, which we know Nick Rallis has deployed in the past. If Buddha or Rabbit goes down, you have a incredibly capable backup. And then if you are staring somebody in round 3 of the draft and you go, hey, this guy we had graded, as a top 40 pick. Yeah, he's a safety. Yeah, we have Buddha. Yeah, we have Rabbit. Yeah, we just signed Andrew, but we can't really pass this up, right? Like that's what the nice thing is. The only signing that you're like, or I guess 2 that you're like, these are starters, are Isaac Seumalo and Tyler Algier. And even Algier, you can kind of put like an asterisk by it, right? Like
he's a 1A. Like, will he play over Connor, or will it be like a 50% split?
Yeah,
it's kind of what you're looking at that.
So yeah, so it's really interesting to look at because again, none of these things you're like, oh hell yeah, like they brought in Roy Lopez.
And I guess that's the problem, right? Too, is because this was a patently terrible team, and no move that they made makes you feel better about the team. Like every move has been, yeah, but are they better? And they won 3 games last year. And so I get for Cardinals fans, that's the hard part. And maybe there wasn't a move that you could really make outside of saying go and get Ken Walker at running back. That would have moved the needle, right? That would have been fun. But pretty much everything has been, you've taken this terrible roster. They haven't spent a lot of money in free agents. So they haven't like done nothing. But they also haven't done anything that makes you feel any better about what this team looks like. Like right now, they could field a team. Like you can fill out your starting lineup and they're all guys who have played in the NFL. You're not going like, we're just going to plug in this guy here. Guys who have started in the NFL, but you don't feel like this team would be competitive with largely most of the league.
Yeah, and you look at it, this is, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's just what it is, right? It's a team that you look at on paper and you go, yeah, there's guys that you are hopeful about, but we can't even say excited anymore, right? Like you're hopeful that Darius Robinson proves something. You're hopeful that Walter Nolan stays healthy on defense, right? We know what Zaven Collins is at this point. You're hopeful that Will Johnson and Garrett Williams stay healthy for a full season. You're just hopeful. You're hopeful that Rabbit is the guy that we've seen, but he also can hold up to the rigors of playing every down in the NFL. And so when you look at all that, you see that this defense, it's not much different from last year. The DC is the same. You moved on from Calais Campbell for Roy Lopez and Andrew Billings. And so you're like, okay, we'll see if this works out. Offensively, you look at it and you go, okay, well, they added, hopefully Seumalo is the same guy at age 33 that he's been for the last 3 years. They still have questions on the right side completely, both right guard and right tackle. You look at Jacob and you go, was that an anomaly or was that something that he can repeat? And can he do it to an extent that it's like winning games and not necessarily just putting up massive stats, right? Like, so these are all questions that have to be answered. So you're looking at it and you're going, all right, well, I guess we're hopeful. We're not optimistic, but we're hopeful that these guys take the next step. So
next on the Rise of Seer podcast, Best Our Cardinals talking about. Let's grade the best and the weirdest moves that the Cardinals have made in free agency so far. That's coming up next on Rise of Seer. We're back on the Rise of Seer podcast, Best Our Cardinals talking about. We've talked a little bit about it, but we graded moves last week. Let's kind of talk about best and worst. I don't know if we're going to say worst, but what their best move, what's their weirdest move? And we've already said what the moves that we've liked. For you, is the Algier signing or the Seumalo signing the best move for them?
It's Seumalo. I mean, the hard part about the Seumalo signing is that, again, he's 33. So you're hopeful that for the next 3 years you've got an impact guy. One of the astute readers on my site, Revenge of the Birds, they commented and they said it's basically a 2-year deal. Like, there's no guarantees after year 2. So if he doesn't work out, they just move on, and it is what it is. And that's a heady way of doing things. That's a heady way of doing things for a team. But at the same time, you look at this and you understand that this is a guy that is 33, or going to be 33 this year. This is a guy that has played a lot of snaps in the NFL.
It's missed multiple games each of the last 2 years as well.
And so you also go, this was probably one of the better signings anybody made, just from a need /fit /cost standpoint. But I mean, this dude's played almost 7,000 NFL snaps in the last 10 years. He is a very good player that's had a incredibly long career. Made a Pro Bowl last year, not 25, but 24. But like you said, he's missed 7 games the last 2 years combined. And so you're looking at it from a perspective of, does he get you, out of 51 regular season games, does he get you 45? 15 a year, I think everybody would be fine with that, right? And if he gets you 45 games, then this is a slam dunk, barring that he's just somehow abysmal now, which I don't think we could blame on Monty at that point, right? Like, so that's what the question becomes. For Algier, the question I have is, obviously I like the signing. I don't think anything negative of the signing. But I've seen a lot of people be like, oh yeah, he carried the load as a rookie. Okay. I gotta take a little.
That's not completely true, because that was Cordero Patterson as well.
Right. He had 210 carries as a rookie, which is a lot. Don't get me wrong. And I know it's a different offense, so we have to, kind of understand it. But James Conner in 2024 had 236 carries. James Conner in only 13 games in 2023 had 208 carries. Like, the carry the load thing is a really interesting way of describing a guy that barely eclipsed 200 carries. And he he is a good receiver out of the backfield, but I wouldn't say he's he's not Bijan Robinson. I think we all agree with that. And so and people might say, well, he didn't get as many chances. Well, the year he had 210 carries, he only had 16 receptions. He only had 17 targets. So again, I'm not saying that he can't be a guy that carries the load, but what I am saying is that he's never done it. He's always, now his split when he was 210 to 144 for Patterson, he was the lead back. So I think that's a better way to put it, right? He was the lead back his rookie year.
Even then, he only started 7 games.
Right.
Like,
And so that, right after that, what did they do? They brought in Bijan Robinson and started scaling his back. And I get it. Like, Bijan's a unicorn. He's a freak of nature. He's, one of the best players in the NFL. But at the same time, too, you have to look at Algier and look at it and go, oh, okay, this is a guy that he's a very talented player, but is he a guy that you can run the offense through for 17 games? And we don't know. I mean, just again, going back to the earlier conversation, we're hopeful, but we don't know because he's never had to do it. So, if he's a guy that goes, has 200 carries, that won't surprise me because he's done that before, right? He's had 200 carries in a season, and it was effective. So I think you could see him doing that, but is he a guy that's going to give you 300 plus touches? I mean, he's never done it. So,
and the fact that they still have James Conner suggests that that they don't necessarily want Algier to be a 200 carry guy. Like, if have a 150 split between him and Conner, and while Algier might be starter, he might not even be the lead back, like the number 1 back, but will get plenty of play. I think Algier's addition might be the most tangible best signing ahead of Seumalo, but that's because it's easier to quantify what a running back does to an offense compared to a single offensive lineman. Because if you don't upgrade in other areas, you're going to be like, I don't know. But Seumalo could also help Paris Johnson take the next step forward as well. You have great play, you have very good play from Seumalo, and that could allow Paris Johnson to take the next step, which he was before, both years before getting hurt. He was playing at a Pro Bowl-ish level without the recognition, and that. But yeah, for me, it's I like Algier slightly more than in terms of best move, simply because the age for Seumalo and the durability raises small questions to me. Now we move to the weirdest moves. For me, it's a tie. The Gardner Minshew, Elijah Wilkinson signings to me are the 2 weirdest moves, because with Gardner, you're like, I don't even understand why. And Wilkinson, they had Wilkinson here, and what, he played 9 games for the Cardinals in 2023, and they cut him, or 2024, and then he didn't make the roster after that. And they cut him before the season. And now, granted, he went out and became a starting right tackle. Like, to me, if you want to upgrade and improve your offensive line, Elijah Wilkinson isn't it. And the Gardner Minshew move at quarterback, as much as I like the idea and I want Gardner Minshew to start over Jacoby Brissett, because I think it'll be a much more fun way to watch the season be unpredictably and probably bad. But it also just doesn't make sense if because they're literally saying, okay, Jacoby, or they think Gardner Minshew's a starter, which is weird.
Yeah, and I know Jacoby just got his bonus, but you look at it, and the base salary thing was always weird to me. I don't understand that one. Elijah Wilkinson, you mentioned, don't necessarily understand that one. I truthfully don't fully comprehend a couple of them. The Andrew Billings one, I guess, again, depth probably could be a roster, a camp body if it doesn't work out, right? Like, it is what it is type thing. I don't mean this to be super negative, but I don't understand the Kendrick Bourne one at all. Like,
for 2 years, like, that's fantastic for him. And
100%
celebrating. Like, the Cardinals were bidding against themselves, and they gave him 2 years, $10 million. They could have got him for cheaper. Now for me, I think that is more to do with Michael LaFleur knowing Bourne and believing in him than anything else. But you're right. The deal is weird. Signing Kendrick Bourne makes sense. 2 years, $10 million. That's a questionable move.
Yeah. And that's why it's just interesting to look at it. And we'll see how it all works out. But yeah, I just don't. Again, I don't dislike him at all, so I don't want people to think that. It was an interesting move to me because, like, all the information you kind of just put out there, like it was an overpay, bidding against themselves. A guy that didn't have any more interest in the NFL in terms of at that cost, and the way that he's talked about it, I think has done a nice job of making Cardinals fans feel good about it. But
yeah, he's juiced up to be here. He really believes in Mike LaFleur. But it was also very funny to hear him talk about, you don't have a quarter. Yeah, I don't care if you don't got a quarterback. I don't care if you don't got an offensive line. Like, so you're admitting. But then he comes out and then says that Jacoby's a great quarterback and this, but and he and Jacoby were teammates at one point in New England. And so interesting, man. It's just interesting, just the way that they'll go about. But yeah, but the quarterback, like the Minshew edition at the money, and especially after we heard that they wanted Jimmy Garoppolo, and it was either a money or a role thing that he wanted to be a starter, I would have understood Garoppolo but also lining it up for maybe drafting a Ty Simpson. We're going to talk about that, but their quarterback plan for this year is weird and while Jacoby Brissett, at least statistically, had a fine season, it's just when they lose 9 straight games to end the year and your quarterback is an old veteran who's not an established starter, and that's who you're running it back with, that's just a weird move. That's a weird choice to make.
1,000%, man. Just 1,000%.
It's just weird. Like, Jacoby could work out. He could work out, but there's one thing we know about his career. Winning games is not one of those things. Now, statistically, and it was exciting because he got Trey McBride catches, he got Michael Wilson catches, and if Marvin Harrison can stay healthy, maybe all 3 guys can put up numbers. But when normally you would take a rookie quarterback and you would run it back with him. So say like Tyler Shuck had been the Cardinals starter over the last 12 games, and he went 1-12. You'd be like, okay, but he's Tyler Shuck. He's young. This is a Jacoby Brissett who's in his 30s. And we've seen probably his very best. Like, we've probably seen the very best Jacoby Brissett's ever going to do in his career. And that's their plan. And that's their plan.
And that's what has people concerned, right?
Yeah. Coming up next for the Rise Up Secret podcast, the best Cardinals talk on the web. There is some quarterback talk for the draft, and then we'll talk a little bit about that guy. That's coming up next on Rise Up Secret. Back on the Rise Up Secret podcast, the best Cardinals talk on the web. Drafting quarterback. Well, if you look at some betting odds, it would appear that the Cardinals are going to try and get a franchise quarterback in this year's draft. Won't be at number 3 overall. That would be foolish. As we know, Fernando Mendoza is going first overall. However, according to Fox Sports, their sportsbook, the Cardinals are the most likely team, the favorite, to land Alabama's Ty Simpson with plus 150 odds. Ahead of the Jets at plus 200, the Steelers plus 320, Rams at plus 330. We do know that the Rams have reported interest. At one point, there was something that said the Cardinals had some interest in Ty Simpson, but that was when they're still playing during the season. How likely? Well, and I guess how opposed would you be about them, 1, taking him at number 34, or 2, trading into the first round to get him, knowing full well that they might want to draft a quarterback again in 2027?
I mean, it's just a weird situation because the people I've talked to have said that the interest in Ty Simpson is very real, and a lot of it comes from the appearance of things. Ty Simpson's kind of the number 2 guy in this class, much like a Jackson Dart would have been last year. And so you have teams that are looking at a guy like Simpson, in the back end of round 1, beginning of round 2. And so if you're the Cardinals and you go, well, we really don't want to be the team that goes into the season with Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew as our quarterback. So, getting a Ty Simpson at pick 34, whatever they pick in the second round, it makes sense. I mean, it does. The question I have is what are the parameters of drafting Ty Simpson, whether it's via trade up in round 1 or sticking and picking him in round 2, that if things go awry, and let's be honest, it's that 4.5 win mark is looking like a high bar to get over the more and more we look at it. So if they were to say go with a different guy after or a different GM, even if Mike LaFleur gets retained, is he going to have the autonomy if they're picking top 2 or 3 to make a move for another guy? Is that something? I mean, I know we've seen it before, right? Josh Rosen and Kyler Murray, obviously, but is that something that would happen? Like, I feel like if you're sold on Ty Simpson, then you draft Ty Simpson and you just kind of go forward. But the idea that like it wouldn't, that you're just taking a bite of the apple and you're willing to take another bite of the apple the next year it's just a weird way to operate to me. Like,
yeah. And I mean, granted, Brissett and Minshew are only signed through this next season. So say you draft Ty Simpson but if you have Jacoby Brissett as your starting quarterback, it 100% makes sense to draft a quarterback early because that's who Jacoby Brissett's been in his career. He's been the guy who gets replaced by another guy, or is to set the table for that guy. And so it would make sense. But say they do draft him and they end up bad enough they can draft another quarterback at the top. So they get Arch Manning, Brissett goes, Minshew goes, and then what? Ty Simpson's your backup quarterback in 2027? Like, did they just pull an RG3 Kirk Cousins deal, but just in consecutive years instead of 2 quarterbacks in the same draft?
Yeah, and that's what's so interesting about this whole situation. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, like for me, if that ends up being the play and they're going to draft another quarterback in 2027, don't trade up in the first round for Ty Simpson. If he falls you, fantastic. If they're at 34 and Simpson's available, 100% on board. But if you have to trade back up into round 1 to get them to then move on from him in a year, I don't think that's a good plan.
I agree 100%.
And with that takes us to the end of this edition of the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk of the Web. We should have a show later on this week. I'll be out in Texas, but I think I'll be able to record during the day, so that shouldn't be a problem. But if not, we will have more, and we should be diving into draft content here probably next week. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.